just something about an unknown that makes us want to know more as we hop into game one. And we will look to address those scores, which I should have done already. Apologies for that, guys. That is a different series. But yeah, so this one, like I said, it's really intriguing to me because Robbie doesn't play the meta that often. And it's interesting because when you talk about a person who doesn't play the meta and you put them in a mirror matchup, you might find yourself pleasantly or shockingly surprised here in all these games. I mean, I don't know how many of these are going to be mirror matchups, but I'm intrigued to see if he tries for something a little bit different here on Dry Arabia, because when you're talking about England, obviously, the most obvious choice is I want Lombos, pew pew, and we'll just see who's a little bit better at micro. But something we've been kind of noticing, a nice little pattern that's been emerging, is players starting to understand the power of, like, England is just kind of an eco-boomer with their farm efficiency to just immediately, like, float double horsemen or even triple horsemen. So I'm excited to see if we get that kind of curveball out of Robbie, or if it's just going to be a standard pew-pew race with Lombos on both sides. By the way, for those like who are wondering what's going to be happening with the N4C main event, I believe the plan right now is Nilly is going to be streaming the main event from his channel. So like if you want the official broadcast when the main event begins on the 5th of March, it should be across there. I believe they're going to have guest commentators. They're going to have like Robbie, Drongo, Nilly, and I think Dave are the primary casting lineup, with Vodka doing the observing work. But there will, of course, be, like, you know, as players get eliminated, they will be forced to brown-nose the players that dominated them, as all tournaments like to do. While T.O. in the back laughs sinisterly at the fact that he managed to get someone to cast the person they just lost to. Okay, maybe they won't be that mean. Maybe they'll do, like, the other side of the bracket sort of thing. But I should be pretty hyped to see. But like I said, hyped to see what's going to happen in this matchup. Robbie, early on, nothing unorthodox at all. There isn't really much I would have expected different, other than possibly him looking into, say, Stone early on if you want to go for that TC play. I've seen a few players attempt the secondary town center. It can feel very funky, though, especially on open matches and maps such as Dry Arabia. I think Dry Arabia is definitely one of those maps that can feel awkward for secondary TC. I think it's a very good choice if you're doing, say, Lipany. Lipany is actually a fantastic map for secondary TC because you have a lot of natural defenses, so it's a lot easier to wall yourself in, block your opponent off, and force choke points. And to be honest, like, you'd think England would benefit a lot from multi-TC spams when they're condensed as well, because remember that England, their defenses fire double the arrows, but not going to be something I expect to see in this game. Instead, we are going to see Council Hall drops, and we're already seeing a notable difference between these two players. So, if you look at Robbie's configuration, this is a very aggressive configuration. This is actually a style of Council Hall placement that was more popular, say, last year, like the first month or two of release. The reason it fell out of popularity is because if you ever lose a fight and you're ever pushed back towards your base, you can't get new Lombos. Because, especially in an England mirror matchup, your opponent will be guarding it. So every time a new Lombo comes out, they'll fire on it. They'll instantly kill it. You're not in range to be protected by the TC, so there's actually no risk to the player doing that. And that's why a lot more players do what Running is now doing. They actually condense their Council Hall right next to their town center so that they're not able to come under fire. Think about the difference, right? The fact that the town center itself has 8 range and then the Lombos have 7, it means you can't actually get close enough, especially if he spawns on the southern side, to assassinate these Lombos as they come out. And it actually means that Running has recovery points if he comes under fire. Robbie doesn't. So Robbie will have to play aggressor in this game, or it could easily backfire quickly. In terms of scouting, I believe both of them did only go for 1. In this matchup, it's a little bit more acceptable. We talked about the fact that in mirror matchups, there are certain civs that don't really care about sheep. I think England is categorized as one of them. For a start, both of these players got very close by the berries, although they're a little bit less efficient. They're still there as a backup. But your primary plan is just to switch over to farms fairly fast. You can already see this is mill down, wheelbarrows being researched. In fact, that is something that Robbie hasn't gone into yet, which is beneficial for the initial Lombo push because you have a little bit additional resources floating. But in about 2 to 3 minutes, the value's going to start to eke through for wheelbarrows, and Running's going to actually take a lead in the economy front. And that's when the fact that you haven't gone for wheelbarrows yet, you haven't even dropped a mill yet, is going to be a little bit punishable. Question is whether we see any early outpost drops, but as it stands right now, Robbie just playing a little bit more conformed, a little bit more responsible. Running is finally going to complete his tech up. Robbie now understands he has a clear lead. It's just a question of what he can do with it. Because it can be very fickle to try and actually find that maximum value. Had Robbie got to, say, 9 or 10 Lombos before he saw that tech up, he's just like in cruise mode because he knows he has enough Lombos to move out and like assassinate left, right, and center. But once again, because this council hall is so close to the town center, it's not as easy to extract value. However, with Robbie making this wraparound, he might find the weak point in Running's base. Running has already switched over into farms. And if he actually extends to this southeastern side and drops 3 here, he's going to actually just get assassinated. He's going to have like these farms that just aren't going to be operational because the TC won't be able to reach out that far. Looks like he's going to be a stable drop. All right. I'm actually really happy about this. Like, honestly, it's something we've seen Mr. do. He actually managed to do it against Mongols on Dry Arabia, and it was incredibly effective. Completely caught him with the trousers down. But it's so logical, actually. Like, horsemen are incredibly powerful right now, especially against England, a civ that is heavily reliant on ranged. Like, you have that additional armor because they buffed the ranged armor, remember? You have the power of this movement speed, like being the fastest unit in the game. Like, it's very hard for just a standard England build to compete with this. Even now, if Running was to drop a Rax, Spearmen, you'd think like, oh yeah, they counter on the maze against the Horsemen. They function as a buffer force. They can keep you off, but like they don't necessarily solve the problem. And also in an England matchup, those Spearmen are very vulnerable to the Lombowmen because of that additional range and the bonus damage they get against the Spears. And there's the Lombos moving in now. One villager sniped out already. Almost gets a second. Will cost him his scout. Big mistake there by Robbie. I don't think he even needed to have the scout that deep. And that's going to be a frustrating loss. Like, replacing that isn't cheap. He at least has a stable, so it should be a bit quicker, but it is 70 food nonetheless. And Robbie quick to move away when he realizes he's outnumbered for the moment. And he will remain outnumbered because he started pushing those horsemen. And Robbie already hard into the farmlands. I like this move by him. In this situation, like, he doesn't have to worry about anything, right? Like, Running is playing full defensive. He's even walling himself in here. So really just forfeiting a lot of the early game presence to Robbie. It feels like Running is already kind of contemplating, like, a shift towards, like, later timing, right? Like, can I play towards castle? Can I get away with that? And I think the moment he sees the horseman as well, like, that thought process is going to ramp up. But the issue with horsemen is because they're such a dominant unit in the early game right now, people who would, like, see them and immediately go, I'm just going to castle instead, they struggle to reach that timing. That timing feels so much more delayed because horsemen, although they're not your French knights, right? Like, they're not the classic I'm a raid you early type unit. They are still very effective at getting in and extracting value. Also, the cool difference about, like, horsemen versus knights is knights, they really have to try and manipulate themselves correctly to get that charge in, right? If you're not getting the charge in, like, if you're a French knight player and you're not getting charges in, you're losing out your ability to instantly snipe units. Meanwhile, with horsemen, like, they're half the price, so you should be able to feel double the amount of there'll be knights. And then you just essentially, with your extra movement speed, and the fact you don't rely on a charge, you just zerg on top of a unit and you body block them in. And it's very easy to then assassinate out villages. Nice little villager snipe again. So Robbie slowly just extracting value. 2 villager lead, now forcing Running to invest into more military. And this is really not Running once. Like, oh yeah, thank God. I was about to say that'd be an awkward placement. But yeah, it's really not what Running wants because right now, like, he just wants to kind of be left alone. He wants to eco-scale. But when he sees his horseman, he now understands that while he was right about the Rax call needing to get the spearmen out, he now kind of doesn't have a way out of his base. It's going to be very hard to just try and push out. And this is something that Robbie continues to exploit. The fact that, like, he knows he's not going to come under fire. He just starts to escalate the farmland area. He can play at maximum efficiency without Warrior being punished. And now he's going to get a Rax of his own. So I think this might just be him trying to get, like, a chunky force of man-at-arms to go in. Or he's paranoid that there's going to be a stable player to counter out his own. I do think you could have just went for a second stable here, though. I think a second stable would have been fantastic from Robbie. And you kind of want that second stable as well, right? Look at the eco side of things. Robbie is investing everything, but Running is prepping himself for castle. So he's playing that full defensive style. And with the palisades going down, he should be able to tap that. The difference maker that could exist here is if Robbie now invests into, say, siege engineering and forces a big fight early on. He's definitely building a big army. Up to 15 longbowmen. Meanwhile, Robbie just hanging around at 14. And I feel like Robbie, like, he's not trying to choke control, right? There's no move to drop an outpost. And I'm starting to wonder, like, what Robbie's endgame plan here is. Like, obviously, you know, endgame win, duh. But, like, what is your win condition in this game? I think for running, it really was about Castle Age. Like, from the get-go, the positioning of his council hall, like, the way that he constructed immediately into, like, the farmlands, like, the choice to go racks instead of stables, everything about what he's done in this game has been screaming, I just want to tech up. And Robbie seemingly understood that and invested in a little bit of a Zerg Horseman with those Lombos. But now he's postured himself defensively. And although he's getting this man at arms, they're not in position. He ran them all the way back to his own base, and it means that he's not going to be able to be immediately in position to punish running for his tech up, which is about to be ready. Horseman will peel off before they finish off the scout. However, Robbie forgot to peel off his scouts. That is going to be vision lost again, and that's tech up, ready to go. Running can get underway with it. Now, Robbie, if he's smart about this, if he times this perfectly, with him being in the mid position in the map, he could instantly punish this. And oh my god, he's not going to be able to. Running, he's going for the White Tower. Very surprising choice here. Running, feeling paranoid that he's behind the military front, which he most definitely is, doesn't go for the greedy eco boom. He doesn't go for the secondary TC in the King's Palace. Instead, he gives himself that buffer zone at the front of his base and also a way of now building siege weapons instantly without having to invest in those costly siege workshops. But Rams now being built. And my concern is at the start of this tech up, remember folks, that tech ups are similar transitions, a transition of its own type. The moment you invest in it, that is X amount of resources burnt from your economy. In this situation, that's 1,800 resources that could have been used to build an army that is now not there. And it means that in the initial minutes of this tech up, you are very vulnerable, and Robbie will look to exploit that. He's moving in now. Outpost going to be dropped for that attack speed. And he's almost got enough wood for a secondary one of these rams. He needs to actually get up to 3 as quickly as possible to burst through the White Tower, as that is going to be quite the nuisance. Running has eyeballs on this. Second ram now being built. Only a few spearmen here, and the White Tower not being used right now to build anything from running might be a big mistake. However, that fire coming out is frustrating for the ram and doesn't even try to aggress in here. Only 4 spearmen means that you're not really going to be too exposed, but he wants to be smart about this, and he gets the value right there. Spearmen, being very greedy here, are going to be assassinated. And I think at this stage, Robbie just builds the 3rd ram and then goes. Running still does not have the solution. I'm very concerned right now for running. I'm not seeing any build into a siege weapon. Like a Mangonel here would be phenomenal. A Mangonel would break Robbie instantly. He wouldn't have any answer. But right now, running, like, he doesn't have the gold, right? He can't tap gold because it's at the front of his base. He's trying to address that to the side now, but because he went for this little bit more defensive White Tower placement and he didn't posture it a little bit more aggressively while he could because he was paranoid about Robbie in the midfield, all of a sudden, Robbie's going to have the opportunity to burst the White Tower down before you actually get any value out of it. 4th ram now being built. And now remember, because he went to the man-at-arms, because he prepped them early, these early man-at-arms are not going to stay that way for long. In fact, at any stage, you can go for the tech up, and the tech up is not expensive. 50 food and 125 gold to make those boys even more beefy. We'll see if he goes for it. I think he's missing a trick if he doesn't get it. I mean, at this stage, I think usually, like, upgrade becomes worthwhile at this point, right? You've got 10 plus of this type of unit. They're going to benefit a lot from the juice up. But still, this is a weird one from Robbie. Oh, wait, I'm an idiot. What am I on about? Robbie can't. Ignore me, I'm an idiot. He's not castled up. Don't know why my brain went there. But running doesn't have anything, right? He's gone into Knights, and I'm not a big fan of this here. I think the Knights are going to struggle. Because the Rams are your big concern. You just need a body force to burst through these Rams. 5, in fact, just marching in right now. And remember, folks, they've got the Network of Castles buff. And if he gets this next outpost up, I think running is just 1 foot in the grave. Outpost targeted first. Lombo's firing in. And this is the thing as well, right? To bring it back to the man-at-arms to curve it into a logical point. Robbie, with this many in the field, if he ever does tech up now, he's going to instantly just bolster this force in the front line. But right now, it is just a body check force that's able to guard the Rams. And you can see the effect of these Rams. White Tower already going down. Running is running out of places to run. Knights are going to have to ride out. White Tower is going to fall, and that means that he can then fight him. He'll look to do so. Fight isn't engaged. Lombo's targeting out onto the Knights. Most of their damage to get, in fact, all of it only doing 1 damage per shot. But with this many man-at-arms here, this is not going to be a good trade for running. More man-at-arms now riding forward. Rams moving in further. Villagers going to move out to try and address that. And the Lombos, they go for the squishy targets. They're going to trade out with the Lombos that Running has defending him, the Villagers as well. And all of a sudden, this is going to get to a dire point for Running. The Knights have been butchered. There's barely any left. He can't push them out quick enough, and he needs to retreat. Well, it's only a 2 eco lead after all this time still, but look at the military hit. Robbie has 5 times the troops. Now, of course, don't be fully deceived. Some of those are Rams, but most of it is actually active units. And these Rams are active in their own rights. The Council Hall about to be bursted down. Your squishy force that you've been using to snipe out the counter Lombo, they're not going to be there anymore, not for long. Council Hall, final set of Ram shots are going to come in, and that's gone as well. Villagers ride out trying to address this. Knights trying to engage, but so many man-at-arms here. Rams are going to move around to the TC. Villagers even firing off against the Lombos, and these trades are getting worse. Running is finally taking hits on the eco front, and he is going to bleed. Most of his army gone. Knights are not good enough, and Running, he hasn't called it just yet, but the Rams non-stop from Robbie. He's going to move in and force every single part of the eco for Running to stop, just to run forward and burst them down. And the problem with this is that means that once your initial Knights are gone, you have nothing to replace them with. Rams are being burst, but damage is being done. So many dead villagers now. The army is gone. The man-at-arms just make short work of them. They might not have the same damage or as good of a damage as Knights, but there's just so many of them. Lombos will back up now. Running takes a hit. That's a 10 eco lead now for Robbie, and he still has his opponent by the balls. Both landmarks on the front are down. No way of building a new army. And this is a conundrum for Running. The only thing he has floating him in this game right now is Knights. If he ever gets spotted on this Western expansion, he's cooked. And that's why he patrols. Because if he ever gets noticed here, if the man-at-arms and Lombos ever move across, it doesn't matter about surrendering the front. Because if you get rid of this goal line, there are no Knights. There is no defense force. And then this game is instantly a GG. But Running's looking to do that anyway. 20 Lombos still here. 10 man-at-arms and 3 Rams. That means that once again, you're going to have to use the Villagers to burst through them. And the moment you do, they're going to get sniped. Meanwhile, Robbie continues to just expand out to the food eco lines at the back of his base, min-maxing his economy the best of his ability, understanding that there's no risk to this. There's no way that Running can come out and punish him. Even with Knights in the field, if Running ever tries to go to Robbie's base, he's going to be surrendering his own. These Lombos weaving around the side. They'll snipe out the repair force. Man-at-arms will clash with the Knights. Knights trying to shift through into Lombos, but they have to engage here. Villagers will now move into the Ram. But so many dead villagers and Running, it's getting worse. It's almost a 20-point eco lead now for Robbie, and these Rams just feel so tanky. Lombos, although they're being assaulted by the Knights, if they at least trade out and kill off the villagers, they could still end up winning this game just by the fact that Rams will be living. Barely anything left for Running now. Knights will chase away Robbie. Robbie has been repelled, but if Robbie at any stage switches over to Spearman, which he is now doing, then this game is done. And here come the Spears now. Spears that get a lot of bonus damage, remember. 28 damage per poke, and these Knights won't feel tanky anymore. They have to peel off. And what do you think Robbie's going to do, folks? When you see that Red England has 1,000 wood saved up, I think we know what comes next. And that's exactly why Running is trying to move past this. He's trying to draw attention back towards Robbie's base. He wants to get him on the defensive. A smart move. He needs so much time to recover, though. And he needs to assassinate a lot of villagers to make himself feel even again. Well, looks like he might be able to find a few here. If he stops off, he's going to sacrifice a few of these Knights. The Spearman always chasing. And you see that Robbie's smart about this. He says, wait, why am I chasing with the full army? We're all slow anyway. Just send a small contingent back and then get back on the offensive. However, Running is now wrapping in from the west as well. Knights will engage with the Spears. Trying to pick them off one by one. But he can never stop for those villagers. However, the secondary line now chasing in, looking to extract value here as Robbie's villagers extract the last tree on this wood line. And they will be punished. Snipes in on him. Needs to actually pull them away, but isn't doing so right now. Instead, he's just trying to actually just mop up the stragglers as they trickle in. The Spearman will finally manage to catch up with the Knights and force them off, but Running definitely getting some value here. Slowing down his opponent a little bit. clawing back that lead. However, Running now needs to get out of this sandwich. And that formation shuffle is going to cost him another night. And while that's happening, look what's on the front. Robbie is still posturing. With just a few Spearmen and a few Longbowmen, he's going to keep his opponent pinned in. Smart move by Robbie. Remember, Robbie has a lot of additional eco flowing. It means he can afford to actually counter out this raid, but then also station a force right outside of Running's base and renew the ram push. And these Spearmen, although they may never touch their target, it's the fact that they're making sure Running cannot hang around to finish what he's starting on these villages. And with Textiles now being researched by Robbie, it's all that much harder for these Knights to extract value. Textiles, which, by the way, Running never researched himself. It's why it was so easy to just pull apart all those villages. White Tower has been repaired up to 2k health, but Trip Ram being built. More Spearmen moving to the front. And this is so much easier for Robbie now. The fact that all he really needs is spears at this stage is so much better. He built the man-at-arms due to the fire coming out from the White Tower and the Longbows, but now that it's just mainly Knights, you don't need them. So you go for the more cost-effective solution. You pay less, you get the Spearmen. The Spearmen are a great solution to these Knights. The Spearmen are finding him. Running has to engage. He has no time to skirt around this. The Rams being constructed forces him to engage, and these trades are starting to end badly for him. And I'm pretty sure 4 Rams is a go for Robbie. White Tower continues to be repaired, but remember what happened last time 5 Rams made this way to it. It did not take long to burst down this defense. And once again, because you oh my god, yeah, he already extracted it. He already went through 4k. This is not good, folks. These gold veins are all he has now, and it means it's in no man's land. And the moment this Ram assault comes in, you're not gathering gold anymore. And if you're not gathering gold, what are you fielding? Because you have all these stables, and it's the only thing that's been keeping you in the game. If you have to fall back to Horsemen, this is all but over. Rams moving in. That means gold has been cancelled for Christmas. Running has 66 gold to his name, and that's probably all he's going to get for the rest of the game. He can trade, but these trades, I mean, how good are they? Just look at the numbers. He's already been doing that. 100 food for 66 gold. 100 wood for 70 gold. It's not really going to keep you floated on the night count. Spearman chasing away the Knights. Rams pressuring the White Tower is going to force the villagers out. Nice garrison just trying to dodge out the fire from the Longbows. But you can't hide inside that castle forever, he says. More Rams being built, convinces Running it is done. There's no way to assault them anymore. Game 1 will go to Robbie. But with Boulder Bay not being picked, that means that Roos can come out and thrive somewhere else. And we're going to have to see if they can thrive as we head for what's probably going to be a cavalry on cavalry engagement in King of the Hill. I'm looking forward to this one. I mean, this is what I was talking about. This is what I was alluding to, is Robbie. He's a little bit of a curveball. You know, he doesn't play by the script. He has his own kind of style of Age of Empires, which is always exciting to watch. I'm excited to see what he's got in mind on this map, because I think Roos is, after the changes, after the nerfs to Horse Archers, the change around with the Castle Age Rush, it's a Civ uncracked. People still aren't quite sure what is the move of it. What is its motive? What is its goal? Like, how is it that you get the full value out of this Civ? I find this pick on this map especially intriguing because this, to me, is still one of the worst maps of the routes. I think the limited wood lines next to your base hurts this Civ more than most. And the reason is because you can't easily use wooden fortresses to return value. And it also means that because of the nature of the layout around you, like there's assaults from all angles really, unless you get like a hyper close to a natural defense like spawn, it's very easy for your opponent to pull you left and right. And the reason that matters is because what do civs that are forced to be defensive do when they're kind of being skirted and pulled left and right? They invest in outposts. They invest in static defenses to defend themselves. Or, of course, you can go for like, you know, spearmen units that can kind of help you a little bit. But let's say, you know, you don't have the option to go for outposts. Your build becomes predictable, right? Like, the way you react becomes predictable. Everything is easily read. And that's the issue with the Roos, is because these outposts that you would build to defend yourself on these exposed maps cost so much, 175 wood, you're really relying on the value you get in returning 20% more wood to pay for itself over time. The problem you have is this wood line right here is pathetically small. You're not going to really get great value out of dropping a wooden fortress here. You can see it, right? It's like maybe there's like 20 trees, around 20 trees, I'd say. Not even 20, in fact. I think 20 would be generous. Yeah, so he's got about like almost 20 there, maybe about 18, because I think I select that one as well. 18 or 19 trees. With 150 wood each, you can argue like you'll make your wooden fortress back, but really, you're not there to make your wooden fortress back. You guys have probably watched Shark Tank or Dragon's Den. You know, if someone walks in and tells the dragon they'll make their money back in 5 years, they're not interested in that. They quite rightly say, I could stick my money in a bank and I'd make more in 5 years. And that's how you have to think about this. With your initial investments, you're looking to accelerate into more value later on. And if you have to drop a wooden fortress on this line to protect it, and your argument is I'm going to make the wood back, you know, you want to make a lot of wood back. You want to have the ability to drop 4 or 5 lumber camps deep and just keep extracting value there. But it's just not the case. And you can't even daisy chain it because the wood lines aren't close together whatsoever. Open up. One big eco booster you will at least get is the Golden Gate. A fantastic tool for the Roost. Still my S-tier landmark. I mean, this thing scales from start to finish so well in a game of Age of Empires. It never really loses its impact. In fact, this landmark has insane value if you end up in an hour-plus game. When people are relying on marketplaces and the trades become worse and worse, you know, just the ability to instantly say, I'm going to trade 100 of one thing for 150 of the other at every stage with the trade never getting worse is such a big booster for this Civ. On the other side, we are going to see running go into the School of Cavalry, so standardized build for France. So France doesn't really have a choice right now. If I recall correctly, there is a few bugs with the Chamber of Commerce. I think, I'm trying to remember like what the problem was that I read. This is the thing, I never see it, so I can't even see what the issue is. I think it's to do with the buff that's meant to give the 30% increase. It doesn't do it. So like it doesn't function as anything other than just a marketplace. Right? Usually when you're talking about these things that like are X building, they have an additional value, right? So like a council hall is double archery range, or a minework palace is a blacksmith but with 25% discount, right? There's something additional. And the Chamber of Commerce has that additional factor. It just doesn't work. I don't know why. I feel like I'm just stuck in a perpetual circle of asking that question over and over again with a lot of things in Age of Empires 4 at the moment. It's just sad it's taken us so long to fix them. So yeah, so when you go for the Chamber of Commerce, you're meant to get an additional 30% resources on any market or dock when you do trade with traders or trade ships. And apparently that doesn't work right now. So yeah, not exactly ideal. It means that School of Cavalry is just your go-to. There's no argument for anything else. Unfortunate. Hopefully it gets fixed soon. There's a lot of these issues that need to be fixed soon. We were just talking in a previous game about HREs, emergency repairs. Doesn't seem to work consistently. I've already seen issues with like the way paling behavior works because of the way that staggered formations and formation shuffles are adjusted. Pavis feels out of place. There's a lot of things right now that need tweaking still. I just hope we get them tweaked soon because there's no denying the numbers in Age of Empires 4. They're not really growing at the moment. And although things like custom games will help recover them, the issue isn't just getting new eyes on the game. It's like when those new eyes are on the game, they need to be seeing a complete product, not an alpha. Well, I need to be seeing is some defense force. So, Robbie, we highlight this, right? When you're playing as the Rus, you don't really have the option to drop on wooden fortress to defend yourself. There's just too much ground you have to cover. Even moving out and dropping 4 or 5 palisades is very risky up against France. And although this would have been a decent map for it, with these 2 very clearly identifiable choke points, he didn't go towards it at all. Too risky to go out in the field, probably. Especially when you consider the nighttime and the first one pushing out and already being there. So, didn't want to risk his eco units. Instead, playing very condensed. I like the way that he's stacking all these buildings. This is actually a really cool move. Something that's kind of underrated when you're up against cavalry civs. Because really what cavalry civs want is open ground. They want open areas. They hate choke points, right? But if you create these natural choke points between your buildings, it means 1 or 2 spearmen can hold back knights where you normally need 4 or 5. Because they don't have any wraparound, any easy wraparound. So really cool way to actually adjust here. Like, if you're thinking about, say you're coming under fire as an Abbasid player and you're up against, say, French Knights, condense everything. Because, especially, like, you'll benefit from that. They will definitely be daisy chaining, right? You'll definitely be getting the full value from your Golden Age. But then, once again, like, these spearmen, you won't need as many of them. Like, let's say, for example, in this situation, Robbie holds this choke point right here into his base. Running has to run around here. You can actually, with a slower unit, respond just as quickly because your opponent is being forced to take a longer route, and you can just basically take these shortcuts between your buildings. And he can never go into these shortcuts because if he does, he's just signing his death warrant. Spearman moving out to defend the scouts in the meantime, as Robbie did do what we would expect to hear playing into pro scouts. The interesting part, if I look across here, is whether the same was done on the other side. And it looks like it was, so running went for pro scouts as well. And he snatched away from his opponent immediately. Archers are now coming out for running, but Robbie has prepped himself some knights. So Stable's been dropped, he'll get a few of those out, and he's going to have them in time to defend him when he goes out for a second round of deer. Cool play by running, though. I love what he's doing here. He's playing up against, like, a very predictable style from the Roos, right? Like, Roos, because the nerfs to scouts, they need a defensive unit to protect them when they recover these carcasses. And Roos want to play in to deer. Like, it's such a natural, logical choice for Roos more so than any other Civ, because you're able to scale a lot of scouts early on with the hunting cab. So then you have to get a defensive unit out because they move so slow. It's going to be spears. It's always going to be spears. And France has that natural scalability up against the Roos and the ability to counter this, because what do French players do? What is their composition? What are the first two units that 80% of French players build? Knights and archers. It's the tried and true, right? From day one. It's still that good. Although running, losing troops like this might not be good. Almost loses a knight in the blink of an eye there. Looks like the knight is going to ride in from running, starting to strike onto those archers. Spearman chasing through. Is going to mean decent trades, as the knight is actually just kind of unhindered as he attacks onto the archers. And it looks like he will be able to buffer running away. Running has snuck out with a few more of those carcasses, though, running back to base with the scouts. So he definitely got his value out of this. However, he's losing a lot of troops as well with the knights falling. So he needs to be careful to engage. Spearmen are going to hang around. The Roos Knight is going to ride in once again onto the archers, and there's enough spearmen here. They will trade out a few more of these knights, and this is costly for running. I'm surprised he's still engaging, because the spearmen will keep on coming, and Robbie will push him away. It's just running's reluctance. Like I said, he understands his opponent has a very predictable opening, and he wants to punish him for that. The problem is that this curveball, the early knights coming back into the picture, really does frustrate the composition of archers that the French rely on early on. Nice move by Robbie. We'll give him a little bit of breathing room. The big issue he has now is he can't move out quick enough to get these deer elsewhere. So Robbie definitely getting the short end of the stick. I'd say like running is going to end up with probably about 70% of the deer on the map, the way this is played out. And that's going to force Robbie into a very uncomfortable situation. He's already invested double rack stable. That's a lot of wood. He's investing the spearmen. Those cost wood as well. He's about to run out of his first wood line. So then he has to extend elsewhere. He's going to need to protect that. That could be vulnerable to raiding. So he's going to be forced to probably palisade himself in. 4 or 5 palisades aren't cheap. Remember, they cost the 5 wood each. Like, this all adds up. You can very quickly see what I was talking about why Roos is a very uncomfortable civ to play on King of Hill. You just don't have the wood surplus near you to float your eco. And that's before we even talk about the fact that because you also go knights, this is even more true. You rely on this wood to be tradable, right? Like, you want to be using these charges in the Golden Gate to get gold for wood. But you might find yourself in an awkward situation midway through this game where you need to actually buy wood from the Golden Gate instead. On this ride-in, these knights, they find value straight away, the butchering. And these villagers are going down. He might lose all of them. Yep, we'll retreat away from the wood line as well. A frustrating situation, and this was the flimsy nature of the Roos I was worried about. Takes a decent fight out near the deer field, but once you're back in your base, once running gets access to do exactly that, run around this base, he's going to be running rampant. Now 5 eco lead, and that'll build bigger, remember, because, well, French villages are built quicker. 17 seconds compared to the normal 20. Robbie tapping into that gold. You can see he's getting ready to tech up. His recovery point truly is castle. The issue he might have is if running has a big enough army. And I've got to give credit to Robbie. Robbie has offset a lot of this scaling, right? Like, you look at the military count, Robbie 13 in the field compared to the 21 of running. Running is heavily investing in these knights after he lost the last battalion. And it means that he's kind of hard stuck here. He's still got some ways to go. You can see he's now starting to float the food and gold required. But he's definitely going to be behind Robbie, and Robbie's going to take the edge there. With the Abbey of Trinity, he might be able to snatch up these valuable relics and start to get gold trickle. Although I will highlight once again, it's not gold that's the problem for him, right? If anything, this gold trickle might just give him access to trading gold for wood, if he has the infinite gold factor. Because wood really is going to be the limit factor, and that's what he needed. Wood and Fortress move out. This will be very good for him. It's going to protect the wood line. There's a decent-sized wood line here. It's also just kind of covering one of the entrances into your base. And I like the fact that he's saving this back wood line. A lot of players would have ran to this first. Robbie, oh my god, he doesn't even know it's there. I'm going to stand by what I said, that he shouldn't go for this wood line first, but He's about to get a pleasant surprise that he's got reserve wood here. The reason you don't want to go for this wood line first, folks, is because if you do get forced off this front line by all these knights, you want somewhere defendable to retreat to still get that resource. And you might have to retreat a little bit quicker than intended here. Didn't get the wooden fortress down. Instead, built the lumber camp first, and that means he's punishable. Knights are going to ride in again. Spearmen chasing, but a little bit too slow. And his own knights won't trade that well against this French cavalry. I mean, he needs to be careful. They're going to charge in. Decent damage done to the Roost Knight and a shift through before they can be punished. And all this is a distraction. It's smoke and mirrors because running, in the meantime, has garnered enough resource to get his own castle age. And this is where the walling attempt is a very fragile move for Robbie. Robbie needs to be careful. With this archer battalion on his western front, he's not going to be able to wall himself in. He's not going to be enclosed. And that means that these raids from the knights are going to continue. Under the primary TC, decides to not snipe onto the villages. The villages, which, by the way, are still only 50 health. No investment into textiles still. And here's another worrying factor. The French player already has the eco lead. In these situations, Roost players, it's not uncommon to see a secondary TC. How do you do it on this map? With such limited wood. How do you just fork up? How do you pony out that additional requirement, that 400 wood? If you cannot use this wood line, this game becomes awkward. Very awkward. And there you go. Another wood-heavy thing. A siege workshop. He needs it. But this is just looking uncomfortable. I mean, look at the difference. Look what's happening in running space. These peasants have never known war. They say peace in our times. Little do they know they're off in a foreign land and invading. You know, there's a holy crusade, if anything, over here. Meanwhile, the people back home, they're just vibing, having a good time. Like, well, we've got criminals, you know, we've got that sort of issue, but a few bandits. But, you know, other than that, there's no Germans riding in from the east. There's no Russians raiding our territory. We're happy. Life is mostly peaceful. And this monastery drop is really smart as well. He's pinned him in. And you see scouts on the east side as well. So this is the worst case scenario for Robbie. Robbie hasn't collected a single relic, and he's going to struggle to do so now. Remember, they nerfed the warrior monks. They don't move at 1.62 tiles anymore. Similar to pro scouts, when they pick someone up, they're limping their way back. And that means they're very easy to assassinate for an army this big. And the crazy part is this one scout means you don't have to guard. This is the first time that the gate is going down after all these minutes. It means that running has never had to even station forces here because there was never a risk of Robbie riding out east. And now running's going to ride in west. Forces out the garrison. Doesn't even have to engage for the trouble of it. And I'm worried about the gold right now. I mean, running, he's built this siege workshop. He can afford one Maga now, but that's kind of it. He's getting very limited gold as it stands. That's going to leave him very weak in the coming minutes. Because while Robbie can't access the goal, you can see running, you know, he's starting to grab it. And he's going to start to grab these relics as well. Everything is looking up for him. No siege workshop just yet. Wouldn't be surprised if he drops one on the front line, maybe. But this Mangonel has to find value. If it fails for Robbie, he's in trouble. He's floating so much food, and he's just not building units with it either. And this is all due to the budget nature of the wood. And now the gold as well. Like, what do you build? What only costs food? There's nothing in the game. Militarily, that's only going to cost food, right? Scouts? That's not going to help you here. Like, every single little chunk of change, right? 20 gold here, 20 wood there. It hurts Robbie so deeply right now because he's just drained. He's got this goal line at the back, but that is it. As soon as that is gone, lights out, right? You don't have any coinage. You know, the Khajiit has wares, but you do not have coin. All the while, Running's army just keeps building up. Almost doubling up that of Robbie's. Robbie is finally going to get the space, though, to put down these walls. That's all because Running did not get the siege workshop down. Still hasn't. But what he has got is relic control. You can see he's moving out for all of them. Finally, one is going to be collected by Robbie, but considering that... Oh, maybe that's two, sorry. But considering you went for the Abbey of Trinity, right? Considering the lead you had on the religious front, the fact that now the French player is going to be the one likely to collect more of these relics makes you very annoyed. And there's that siege workshop we were waiting for, so Springles are going to make it to the front very quickly. And remember, the awkward part, if you're Robbie in this situation, it's one of the awkward parts of actually playing as the Ruslan defensive. You can't hide behind these wood walls and fire Mangonel safely. Springles will shoot through them. You're not a Stonewall Civ. You can't actually have that natural arc defense where, oh, well, he can't shoot me. Mangonels can fire over wall, though. Instead, he'll just dice you straight away with Springle sniping. Frustrating situation for sure. I think it's something that's easy to forget about as well because we don't really see it that much. Like, Roost players, you know, they've been adjusting. But like we said, Roost in its prime, it was always just about Horse Archer spams, right? Whoop-de-doo. You didn't really care about being defensive because you were constantly raiding. You weren't reliant on those wooden palisades. You weren't reliant on Springles and Mangonels. But new generation Roost has to consider this variable. And it is very punishing. You know, you can't say Trebs and Mangonels, I'll stick them behind a stone wall. I'll cheese my way to victory, stone wall after stone wall layer. Instead, you've got this defense that really stops nothing. At least nothing from range. That's before we even get into the subject. Like, something we haven't even discussed yet is how disgusting this position is. He can't play towards the front of his base. Where Robbie has the posture, like, Running just has this natural high ground. If Running gets a few Mangonels here, he could decimate Robbie's army in the blink of an eye. If he gets Trebuchets here, boom, just done. Like, it's very frustrating because Trebuchets can easily reach your primary buildings. I think even the Golden Gate landmark is close enough for that. But look at this, Robbie! He used that surplus food to good use, in fact, as he's going to be going for the Imperial Age, but this is dangerous. Remember, whenever you do this type of investment, it's such a big hit to your economy. That's 3,600 resources that could be being put into a military force, instead being put into a tech up. And with Running, knocking at your door with a siege workshop on the front, with a keep as an established point from which to reinforce, in the blink of an eye, Running could flood into the Roost base. We'll just have to see how Robbie's going to respond to that. Mangonel moving out to snipe out the scout. Yeah, he'll finally realize his mistake and get it back behind the wall. Springle will not be quick enough to punish that. But the moment that Running sees this, watch how his whole attitude to this game is going to change. Because Running hasn't floated, right? He hasn't actually kept huge resource deposits in reserve to just get this value, right? And getting into the Imperial as well. His food is very much lacking. But now that he gets the news this has happened, he's going to posture. Because he's going to understand that, actually, Robbie's now going to be waiting on tech upgrades. And then also, if he went in on this tech up, how big is his army? Because he can't have much left in his base, right? Like, you've limited him. You've actually just pinned him in the corner and starved him out. And we can see ourselves. We have God vision. We see how just so small and insignificant Robbie's army is. And he could be crushed like a bug by the infamous and dominant power of the Roost and Castle Age here. So many veteran Royal Knights as well. 16 here. 3 Springles on the high ground. Robbie's Raiders coming in from the southeast side. These are still only early Knights, though. They never got upgraded, so even if they make their way into the eco lines, which they won't be so lucky at this rate. I mean, Running, it's going to be close. If he quick walls this, he's going to be protected, but he doesn't know it's coming. The question is, how effective is it going to be? Well, they are in. They'll snipe out the Villi, and they'll look to go deeper. No forces at home right now, but more Knights coming out, and these Knights are going to be better, naturally, than the Roost ones, but also being a whole tech up ahead. Just one spin is enough to kind of scare him into a corner. Robbie has to leave. The only good news for Robbie right now is Running. He hasn't escalated yet. Still, no trebuchets in play. There's a good reason for that, folks. It's the fact that you're up against Springles that will have additional range very soon. If anything, in this situation, Running just wants to get the tech up. And there it is, Red Palace placement. He could be more aggressive with this. And I would love to see him cancel it and shift it right towards the cliff edge. But feels it's too risky with Mangonels being hidden. But Red Palace here, it'll be a formidable force. Remember, the way the Red Palace works, as you can see there, every unit you garrison is an additional arbalist. This defense is absurd. You'd think it would belong to England, the amount of arrows that come flying out of it. And that's going to pin you in. I mean, Robbie, he already was struggling to find a way out of this base, now more so than ever. Wooden Fortress being constructed just to try and give vision on the high ground. Remember, for some magical, stupid reason, outposts somehow see up hills. I hope they fix that soon. You know, if a Relic employee finds this recording, maybe, I don't know, make outposts do the same check that units do. I don't understand how this unit here is about to see up a hill. Maybe I'm just old-fashioned like that, but I don't think they've got satellite technology back in the 16th, 17th century, so not quite sure why they can see up hills. Robbie moves out, though. Deletes his own wall so he doesn't get stuck on a choke point. We'll look to drop that keep. We talked about this timing, right? He was going to be forced out sooner or later. And he's timing it just as the gold is drying up. So if he actually gets buffered back in his base, this is all over. It's very important that this move pays off. However, with running, freely now getting up into Imperial with no punishment to him, every second Robbie waits benefits the French player here. Because those tech ups are going to start to fly through. You're going to get elite status, and then all of a sudden that technological lead is gone. The issue that Robbie has is because, like I said, he has to pad protection around this gold expansion first. He can't ride in. He can't punish. And now with a Red Palace there, it's even more difficult. I mean, you can see, almost done. 15 seconds out on the elite status. And this, my friends, is about to become a very fickle state of game for Roos. Bombards riding out, well, two of them at least. Remember, they are at least more costly due to the high armory. So that's something he's at least able to min-max on that front. The concern I have right now is running is able to afford so much more. He's been tapping this gold in the center at all times, unhindered. And these spearmen, have they even? No, they haven't. Man-at-arms, spearmen, all of it has not been upgraded. Despite the lead on the technological front Robbie's had, he hasn't had the same luxuries with gold, and you can really see it in his unit types. Spearman upgrade finally comes through. Man-at-arms are still waiting, though. Luckily for Robbie, there are no Arbitrators in play just yet. I spoke too soon. They've started to be pushed out now. So running already anticipating where his weakness might be, and he preps for it. Running, very kind of strategic about this. Obviously, we got to remember, guys, Robbie's a point up. Running, he doesn't want to be too risky about this. This isn't uncommon when you're in a match point situation. If you build a lead like this, you just try to exploit it. This is the old style of Age of Empires 4 we've seen a lot in the past, where players would take an initial lead, and they just push it and push it and push it and push it. And it's kind of interesting to think, like, if running wasn't on match point, like, if it's the other way around, when he saw that tech up several minutes ago from Robbie, would he have just rushed into the base? And I think he might have tried. But he can't afford that type of gamble, especially with limited vision. That's the variable that matters here. You know, we have God vision, but when we have a look at Robbie's vision and we have a look at running's vision, you can see running is limited in what he can see. But not limited in what he can snipe. That's going to be a freebie. The Springwood army is building up, but one of the issues of relying heavily on siege in this situation is you can get flanked. So you do have to be a little bit careful here. And this Red Palace, it's fully garrisoned with the veteran archers, which means that these archers have all been upgraded into Arbitrators. And remember, those Arbitrators do a lot of damage. So even your siege weapons will burst very quickly. I rest my case. Well, I warned you. It's a powerful, powerful landmark. I think a lot of people really sleep on just how much damage this thing can do when postured aggressively. Usually we see it used in a more defensive location, similar to a keep that would, you know, give you control of a gold vein, or maybe a keep that would give you control of a sacred site. But parking this right outside your opponent's base can make them incredibly uncomfortable in the blink of an eye. Need to be careful with these Springwood Rangers. Remember, the Roost ones have 1.5 additional range, and we can see that coming into effect. And it looks like, oh, this is interesting. So running, he's trying to assassinate the Mangonels. He just wants the ability to run in hardcore and just like try to overwhelm with his clump forces. And he has got 1 or 2 Mangonels of his own, which will struggle to get these shots out against Springwoods. Villagers on the front from running. I don't think that was intended. Oh my. Robbie's going. Even the villagers are going. They've been conscripted. And they're going to be butchered. That's the first thing the Knights actually make swords with. You know, meet swords with here on the front. And more of them riding in onto the Red Palace. This is an all-in from Robbie. Every single person's got a torch or a sword in their hand. They say, fight for your country. But instead, you're just dying for it. Running. Butchers a bunch of them, backs up as the spearmen wrap around. Arbitrators struggling a little bit in the face of so many spears. But this Red Palace is bleeding red troops. And it's enough to convince him there's no way back. Robbie will give it over, and King of the Hill will be dominated by France. despite how he looked like he was running, the only thing he's going to be running towards here is a third game, as we will need to bring it down the line to decide it between these two. Really well played by running. Very defensive style, like we said. You know, I would love to have seen what would happen if we had a situation where he's the one who's on match point and he can maybe play a little bit more aggressive. I think he would have tried to end this a little bit sooner. But always playing from a position of strength. I think credit to Robbie where credit is due, but you can see the frustration of the understanding that this game isn't working out. He can see that the Red Palace is there. He can see that his opponent has a very big force. And he understands if this drags out any later, the issue he's going to run into is that while he has like very great siege weapons, he doesn't have surplus resources to cannon fodder. And if he can't cannon fodder, then it means he has to expose his siege weapons, which is why he literally cannon fodders with villages. Because if he can take that victory in the front and he takes out the Red Palace, he can actually just flood across the map. With bombards in place, he could easily just siege down the French base and maybe turn it. It's a very all-in play, but I understand why Robbie done it. He could take that risk. He was 1 point up, but now it's going to be a match point both ways situation. You know, it's going to come down the line. And, you know, considering the way that running played in this second game, because he was on that match point, I'm a little bit skeptical going into this third game. Because one thing that's got to be said of Robbie is, like, Robbie seems willing to take risks. You know, even in his... From the draft to the way he plays the game, I think he's a little bit of a risk taker, and I think that's something that might catch running off guard as we head into map number 3. It is going to be Hillendale. Running is going to be man in the HRE. However, his opponent is going to be unorthodox. It is going... Well, definitely unorthodox because they're not Roos, but unorthodox in choice as well, as it is actually, in fact, going to be Robbie playing as the French, which I'd love to get into right now if the game hadn't crashed. All right, give me a sec, guys. Apologies for that. We'll just restart it right now. Or in this situation, restart it. I'm very unhappy about that. Yeah, actually, I'm not surprised it crashed. I don't know if you guys could see it, but in one of the games earlier, it looked like it was struggling. There's some serious performance issues with Age of Empires. I just don't understand why. Like, no offense to the devs, but it's not getting any... I wouldn't say it's getting any awards for graphical fidelity anytime soon, right? So it's kind of baffling how unoptimized it's become. I feel like with every patch, it actually gets a little bit more crashy. I mean, we're turning from an RTS into a NASCAR race, really. What I mean? Like, the crashes, like, it's... So, typically, when you think of games that are going to crash more often, it's like, you know, obviously, you can have things like memory leaks, and you can have, like, badly optimized ones, but, like, if you're talking about, like, a game that looks pretty, has low frame rates, like maybe stalls computers, that's a bit more understandable. I think, like, you know, a lot of people, when Crysis came out, they're like, yeah, it's going to crash my PC. Have you seen how pretty the game is? Like, it doesn't really have that. Crashed like twice in a few hundred hours? Nah, I've had a decent amount of crashes. It's the only game I have it with. And usually it's not in-game, at least. Or if it's not crashes, it's definitely like a clear frame rate drop. It's definitely some sort of lag. But, like, I've seen plenty of players, like, complaining about, like, random crashes. There is something weird about it. I think, actually, maybe it's got something to do with the spectating. That would be my guess. I don't know if, like, the more games you spectate, like, it kind of... Almost like a memory leak or, like, you know, reserved RAM or something. You crashed in a game before? Yeah, I mean, that obviously is going to be annoying. I think there's, like, I would imagine there's something wrong with, like, the way that it stores replays after you see them. Almost like it's not getting rid of them. Right? Similar to, like, the whole concept of, like, caching, right? It's almost like it's caching the replay still. That's the only way I can describe it. I've noticed it more on the replay side. Like, if I go for a long stream, the more games I do, like, it's more likely it might crop up. But you know what, guys? It's finally time. Let's get into that deciding game. So here we go. Like we said, it's coming down the line. 1-1 apiece. It will be decided here on Hillendale. And it is going to be a tried and true popular choice of the HRE up against a very unusual site here on Hillendale. Is it going to be France? And the reason this is especially unusual is France don't necessarily seem like the CF that would get inherent value from this map. For a start, they don't really tend to play condensed. They don't want to wall themselves in and rush up towards castle like, say, the HRE will. They don't have this power play like the Delhi do at the moment on Hillendale, where they happily play towards the sacred sites and prolonged feudal. They're very much a CF that the objective, the win condition is early raiding into their opponent's base. And the issue with that is that with these natural choke points, these opportunities to wall in, it's very hard to get in there. There is ways that you can actually, like, kind of get an emphatic victory on your opponent's high ground quickly. And where we've seen it especially be effective is, say, China and England, right? Where they get into your base, they drop the initial outpost, they choke you in, they take away your wood line, the game is over. Once again, France don't play towards that. I don't remember when I last saw a French player build an aggressive outpost. Defensive maybe, but definitely not ones on their opponent's side of the map. So, like I said, going to be intrigued to see the way that Robbie plays this. Open and wise, definitely a fairly protectable location for him. There's a little bit of a flood at the front of his base here, but obviously we're not going to expect the HRE player to take advantage of that. Usually HRE player tends to be defensive. They'll play towards the center of the map, similar to like the logic of the Delhi player, but for a different reason. A Delhi player will play towards the center of the map, looking to prolong feudal. An HRE player will play towards the center of the map, looking to rush into castle and instantly pick up relics. So it's all about that castle age timing. And then, Robbie, I'm wondering, is it really just going to be knights? Because I've seen him do this against a different player. That was a China-France matchup. But I think there's like some kind of half-half opportunities maybe for France here. I don't want to say 2 TCs. I think that's a bit too greedy. But there could be some sort of kind of eco-expansionist element to this. Like, pocket ecos is one thing to highlight for the French player. Like, if he ever drains the initial resources, he's going to be able to actually move out to these like, more loose resources without any worry. I think that's something running can't do unless he fully walls himself in. And something that someone in chat has astutely identified is, yeah, this wood line actually is bad for you. It's very deceitful as well, because you look and you go, oh, nice. I saved wood on palisades or stone on stone walls. I don't have to walls much. Yeah, but if someone just walks over and chops a single tree down, bye! In your base, thumbs up. I wonder if they're going to fix that. There has been kind of talks around maybe adapting it to be so that, like, if you chop a tree down, it doesn't become passable for all unit types. I think the way it works in AoE 2 is it's something along the lines of if you chop a tree down, you can then place a building to cancel the tree, and then, like, you get access. But, like, outside that, you know, it doesn't... You don't just access it. You don't just walk past it. It is definitely making these tree lines... Like, these tree lines are definitely turning palisades and stone walls into a trivial factor, but we'll see how they adapt it. I know there's been a lot of talk around stone walls as well, being a little bit too strong in their current format. I can kind of see where people come from on that. I think, like, one of the issues with stone walls is, like, I don't think they should have the same quick walling element that you get out of wood walls, maybe. I like, actually, that palisades can be quick walling. Like, I think that's a cool mechanic. But I don't think it, like, makes as much sense for stone walls to do the same thing. I think stone walls should maybe be passable until they're constructed. I don't know how people would feel about that, but I think it's a bit more sane. Especially considering it's so hard to breach stone walls unless you actually have siege units. Whereas with palisades, of course, you can just start throwing torches at them straight away. So, tech up is going to be complete first for France. A little bit surprising here. Running a little bit slower. And this, something we haven't highlighted yet, is just how bad this spawn is. Not complete min-max, I would say, with the wood line, the food. But then again, the golden side. So this probably, like, this is a reasonable positioning. Something to quickly highlight. When you play as the HRE, you should be dragging your sheep to the corner of your TC that is closest to your eco lines. That way, your prelate spends less time running around, more time blessing people. So he did do that. Thumbs up to running for making that small maneuver. This Archon Chapel, it is going to be prioritization on wood and gold. This leaves him vulnerable in his early game presence. He's going into the racks. My concern is really the food, though. I mean, I think, like, unless you control this initial choke point, it's going to be very easy for the French player to raid in on both sides. So, what I'd really love to see running do is just actually set up secondary palisades, maybe. Because, as we've highlighted, like, there is going to be a way in, potentially. But for the moment, he has at least blocked him. So, the scout makes it in, but everything else that Robbie has won't. He will start burning down now. And running is finally going to arrive in the feudal. Should be a few spearmen coming out to buffer off those knights. And I wouldn't be surprised if Robbie is already, dropping the archery range. Understands he's got to reach over and protect his knights as they try to just move their way through these walls. And he's going to be dropping the mill as well. This should just be wheelbarrow tech. Wheelbarrow tech that isn't accessible on the other side. Running has, surprisingly enough, not even thought about going for a mill. Quite surprising, this situation. Now, the reason he's going for the sheep first is because there's no point instantly going to the deer line, because with the Prelate Blessing, the Holy Inspiration, 40% increased gathering rate, deer aren't going to be quicker than sheep. However, this does mean if he moves out in that deer line, it could be a kind of weave in, weave out factor for the Knights from the French player. He does need to be a little bit careful. He's going to have to heavily prioritize keeping these walls up. Should they ever go down, this is going to turn dark very quick. Really big credit to Robbie on this vision factor. Such a highly underrated element, and something that I've been kind of pleased to see from Robbie. Like, one of my big issues with these Age of Empire players, like these ones that come from AoE 2, AoE 1, Mythology, like, compare them to Craft players, they've been a little bit lacking on the scout side of things, which kind of, to me, is a huge issue. Like, it's why I think if you look at the top of the leaderboards, it's heavily dominated by Craft players. It's actually one of the biggest highlightable differences. You know, you can talk about individual skills and all these years of experience. Something they seem to have over a lot of these other players is an understanding of, like, vision control. Not just getting your own vision, but denying your opponent. In fact, when we look at running, he's finally moving a scout across, but it's been so long since he's had eyeballs on Robbie's base. Meanwhile, Robbie has been running circles around this base, staying out of range of the TC, and he understands what's coming next at every stage. And it means he's able to preemptively shift ahead. He can transition ahead of his opponent. It's such a big lead. And it's odd to me that a lot of players still underrate the importance of scouting in a game that is naturally about counters. So if it's naturally about counters, do you not want to get ahead of the curve? Absolutely. And that's why I think Robbie is already having this edge, where he's going to be able to actually have the right composition. He understands if you have to switch across. And right now, all he's seeing is running, responding, going through the motion, stable, racks, has to respond to me. It means actually right now, because he's a full melee force, these choke points betray him. They're very easily manipulatable because you can only have so many units attacking. But if your opponent plays hard into archers, all of a sudden, you know, death by pew-pew, everything can fire upon you. You don't have the same luxury. I do love this move, though. Switching over to the racks as well. So after you go double archery range down to racks as well. The cool thing about this is it suggests to me that Robbie is understanding that this game's going to need, like, a decisive blow moment, right? Knights are all about kind of carving your opponent up piece by piece, right? You know, I'm going to nip at him here, nip at him there. It's death by 1,000 wasps. Or you could just maul him to death as a lion. And that's where the racks becomes useful. You have a frontline unit. There might even be a blacksmith soon into, like, a ram play. And then all of a sudden you have that line that when it closes its jaw, it's going to take a big chunk out of running. It's not just going to look to just nick him at the surface and give him a little bit of a chip here and there. It's going to look to instantly just give a killing blow that denies running out of this game. And the cool idea behind this racks play, it is a little bit gambly because it means that if running does make it up into castle, because you're playing with a static force, it might be a lot harder to roam around the mid-map and defend these relics. Finally, the deer are being accessed. Yeah, there's an interesting discussion to be had around, like, aggro on deer. I think it's kind of hard to manipulate because it seems like there's an internal timer on deer aggro before they move again. And I feel like sometimes the range at which they react is a little bit fickle. I think it's why we don't see more players shift it. It's kind of a micro-intensive thing. I do think it's going to become more prevalent as the months go on, as players become more attuned and they take more notice of small things. I think it's like the next expansion on things I've just been talking about, like the HRE min-maxing a prelate by moving their sheep to a different corner of their TC to begin with. It's definitely a very micro-intensive thing right now, though. Like, you can see, it'll shift here, but then if they ran the deer again, it wouldn't move for like another 5 seconds, so it's a bit funky. But tech up underway. Running will be going into the Regnitz Cathedral, as expected, so nothing unordinary. Scout is finally going to go down, and Robbie understands this, so he's already going to be out of prep. He understands his opponent's about to be weak, and you can see Running respecting that fact that he's going to trip wall himself in here with Palisades. Knights are going to ride away, but archers are going to arrive, and these spearmen are going to get butchered. And this is awkward because, look, you've walled yourself out. So you're losing the spearmen, that's guaranteed. Horsemen will at least get away. The issue you now have is if you can't get all these walls up and if it doesn't last long enough, your opponent might just break through. Because the issue you now have is you've revealed your hand, right? You're teching up. You need troops out in the field to access those relics. As it stands right now, Running might struggle to get more than one relic, right? He's got one in his base. That's safe. Whoop-de-doo. The rest, however, are very difficult. Especially these two central ones. I think Running's about to kind of have a fragile state. Remember, this isn't the quickest of Castle Age timing either. Like, he went hard into aggressive units early. Now switching into the man-at-arms, prepping for this. An interesting choice. Usually we see a shift out of more horsemen, but I think he understands he has to take a direct fight. He's not getting out of his base for free anymore. And Knights will fare reasonably well against the Man-at-Arms, though. That's something we have to remember. These Royal Knights, if they get their charge off, they do get that bonus damage for 3 seconds. So you definitely need to get that initial influx of Man-at-Arms before you take this fight. But you are going to run out of time quick. Spearman's starting to push out. En masse. More Knights joining in as well. I think Robbie understands that he needs a clear brunt force line. Like, just trying to push through here against the Man-at-Arms. The interesting part is Siege Engineering. Yeah, he's already got it. So he's prepped for this, and it's going to be a ram. I was wondering when that was going to come out. So this is about to escalate. Now, remember the HRE, although the emergency repairs can be a little bit buggy, you can sometimes make it work for you. And that can keep some of your infrastructure up. However, when you condense this much infrastructure together, if you emergency repair one building, your opponent can instantly switch over to another 1 or 2 rams. So you could easily lose this forward base. Or the forward part of your base. The forward part of your base is your only aggression. And I don't feel like he's built up enough man-at-arms just yet. So this is a delicate state for running. Running as it stands, has banked one of the relics, and he needs to sneak out for the next one. And yeah, he's on his way. But he's already through. Robbie's going to strike now. Straight in on the racks. Robbie with a sizable military force here. Will move in with the Knights, just trying to make sure he doesn't have the aggro of the TC. Even if he does, it doesn't really hurt that much, though, as it's not being garrisoned. The racks. Will we get the repairs in this game? I think so. It should be coming out in a sec. He can afford one more hit at the ram. However, if he's not careful, the archers are making the difference here. That's gone. That's just gone. All right. E-repair don't want to work. Someone call an auto repair service because it looks like running is about to need it. He's throwing to the next to the racks. He doesn't care about the stables. He understands his opponent can't afford that. And he's going to try to burn through the second one. I mean, this is worrying right now for running. Running is returning the relics right now, but I'm not even sure if he gets them in time. Like, if he loses too many of these buildings, it's going to be a flooding. Right now, he's not addressing the rams. There's the emergency repairs. It's finally coming out. Robbie is going to continue on to the same structure, though. Doesn't care about it. Knights, in the meantime, targeting out the stable. He's slowly burning this entire military district. Running is buying time, though. Up to 12 man-at-arms. The concern, however, is how many Knights is he going to have to face? A hell of a lot more. They're continuing to just surge out. And although these archers do next to no damage, it is going to add up. When you're not able to access them, it might just be the X factor here. Stable is going to be burned. Rams continue to commit onto the racks. Village is going to ride out now. Man-at-Arms going to engage. Knight's going to turn around. Belly in with the charge, though. They are going to hold him back. Another ram built. Archer's going to join in. And running. I think he jumped the gun. This is too soon. He's getting enveloped. The villagers are going to chase out. The archers are going to switch target onto that instead. Now they're doing damage to the economy. The man-at-arms being held back. They have a way out. But if they retreat now, the villagers are going to be butchered. They already are. They need to get away. 10 of them retreat, and the damage being done, though, down to 28 eco units. Meanwhile, Robbie with 20-point lead, and the man-at-arms are dead and bled. And there's still one ram up, and that means you can actually just renew the siege. That is a butchering right there. 2-for-1 special on the Villy snipe, all because they want the rams gone. And the impatience of running is going to cost him dearly here. You know it's bad when you're dropping outposts right next to your primary TC at 14 minutes in. More rounds coming out. Robbie, he can continue to zerg this up. Gets up to 3 rams, he can instantly go in. Meanwhile, think about the wood factor here right now. Something we haven't really highlighted is because of where this invasion came in, because of where you've been extracting wood. One of the biggest X factors, one of the details that can really just string you up when you're playing on Hill and Dale is if you can't tap wood. And because he's investing in the outposts, he hasn't got surplus. So if he loses these racks, the game is pretty much over. He needs to get on the wood right now. This isn't good enough. He needs to shift around to the west side and take that risk, because if he runs out of wood, the game is all but done. E-repairs coming out. More rams being built in the meantime. No garrison effect. I'm surprised by this. He's got all his man-at-arms standing here, AFK. They can at least be firing more arrows out, if nothing else. And Robbie, this oppression, denying his opponent. You know, he's got 3 relics in that Regnitz Cathedral, but he's struggling. He can trade for the wood to a certain degree, but these trades do not become desirable quickly. You can see 142 gold for the 100 wood every time he buys more. He gets a worse trade. And that merchant repair is still on cooldown for 25 more seconds. Another Rax is going to fall, and now they can move towards the primary TC. It's going to be move out with the man-at-arms. Archers can target onto the villagers, though. Knights are going to engage the MAA line, and that means France is going to be fine. Meanwhile, running not looking good at all. Robbie now at 54 eco units. It's 25 for running. He's going to be below 20 at this rate. He never got textiles. He never built a secondary TC. He never gave himself any way to recover. And now we'll finally garrison, but the damage really is done. Down to 22 villagers. And yes, you have a 40% buffer, but that counts for diddly squat when you're being butchered like this. Archers are in, knights are in. It's a party in the HRE base. And this looks completely one-sided. You can turtle up all you want. You can drop as many outposts as you want. You can have as many relics as you want. But it really doesn't make up for this difference. It's now 15 villages versus 57. And you know how my maths works, folks. You know how I feel about this. About 5 villages to each of these relics. Sorry, not... so I do 40. Sorry, let's be fair. We do 40. So he's got 7.5 villages to each of these relics. Now, as you could tell by the first maths, my maths isn't fantastic. But even I can tell that that does not make up this differential. This insane differential. And even with the marketplace, it's not good because every time you're forced to do these trades, they get worse and worse. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's market manipulation. No, so he's lucky on that front because Robbie, he could be trying to float and surplus and sell surplus elsewhere. Because remember, when one player does a trade, it manipulates the trade values for marketplaces for both players. Something we haven't really seen too often, but it is something you can do when you have your opponent over a barrel like this. That kind of market manipulation, that insider trading, the Age of Empires. And here he goes. Rams are in. Knights are in. Everything's in. And it's about to be good night for running. Because there's just nothing left here. The upgraded outposts are going to fall. He's going to try for a Hail Mary of maybe banking the relics in the outpost, but he needs every bit of economy he can get now being down at 16 workers. And this is the end of the road. Running, despite his best effort, just outdone. Surprised by the arrival of the French on Hillendale, and it will allow Robbie to cruise through seemingly so easily in this third decider game between them on Hillendale. But the true power of France is being revealed. I mean, when they go in all aggressive, they don't half-arse it, and neither does Robbie.